The cold iron of the six-shooter pressed against Eleanor Sullivan's temple, her heart hammering against her ribs as she stared down the man who'd once called himself her father, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly on this bitter October evening in 1878. "You ain't my daughter no more," Thomas Sullivan declared, his voice carrying across the ranch yard where the entire town of Redemption Springs had gathered for the annual harvest feast. His gray beard trembled with rage, his eyes once kind now hardened like Arizona bedrock. "No daughter of mine would steal from her own family." Eleanor felt the eyes of everyone upon her, the ranchers, the shopkeepers, the schoolmarm, and even the children who'd once looked up to her as the doctor's assistant. The long table laden with roast beef, cornbread, and pumpkin pies seemed to stretch for miles under the torchlight. "Papa, I swear I didn't take it," she pleaded, her voice barely audible above the murmurs of the crowd. The money box from her father's medical practice had gone missing, $300 meant for new supplies and medicine, and somehow the empty box had appeared beneath her bed that morning. Someone planted it there. Her stepmother, Victoria, stood rigidly beside her father, thin lips curved in a satisfied smile. "The evidence speaks for itself, Thomas," she said, her hand possessively clutching his arm. "I always said that girl was trouble." Eleanor's eyes darted to her two stepbrothers, Jeremiah and Micah, who avoided her gaze. They knew something, she was certain of it, but they remained silent as graves. "I'm giving you till sunrise to be gone from this town," Thomas said, lowering the gun but not his voice. "You're dead to me, girl." "Dead to all of us." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Banishment was as good as a death sentence for a 19-year-old woman alone in the territories. "Mr. Sullivan," Sheriff Wilson stepped forward, concern etched on his weathered face. "Perhaps we ought to. This is family business," Thomas snapped. "And it's finished." Eleanor felt her world collapsing. 3 years since her mother's death, 3 years of enduring Victoria's cruel machinations, and now this final betrayal. She'd known her stepmother wanted her gone, but never imagined she'd go this far. Without another word, Eleanor turned and walked away from the feast, from the only home she'd ever known, her steps faltering as tears blurred her vision. Behind her, the music resumed, conversation gradually swelled, and the celebration continued as if she'd never existed at all. She had only the clothes on her back, a simple blue calico dress, worn boots, and her mother's shawl. No money, no horse, no future. Night was falling fast, the temperature dropping with the sun. She didn't know which direction to walk, only that she needed distance between herself and the humiliation she'd just endured. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her heart skip with fear. Had her father changed his mind? Had he sent someone to ensure she left town immediately? Eleanor quickened her pace, stepping off the road into the tall prairie grass, hoping the darkness would conceal her. The rider slowed, and she heard the creak of saddle leather as someone dismounted. Miss Sullivan. She didn't recognize the voice immediately. Deep, with a slight southern drawl that didn't belong to anyone from Redemption Springs. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, leading a magnificent black stallion. As he stepped into a patch of moonlight, Eleanor recognized Adam Forrester, the quiet cowboy who'd arrived in town 6 months ago to work at the Carson Ranch. They'd exchanged few words, only when he'd occasionally come into her father's office for liniment or bandages for injured ranch hands. "I saw what happened back there," he said, keeping a respectful distance. "Didn't seem right." Eleanor wiped at her tears, embarrassment flooding her. "It doesn't matter. Nothing matters now." Adam shifted uncomfortably, his hand resting on his horse's neck. "Where will you go?" "I don't know." The admission hung in the night air, heavy with implication. "You can't walk all night with no supplies and nowhere to go," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "There's a campsite about 2 miles up this trail. I was heading there myself." Eleanor regarded him suspiciously. "Why would you help me?" "You don't even know me." Adam's face remained impassive in the moonlight, but his eyes held a kindness she hadn't seen from anyone in town tonight. I know what it's like to be falsely accused of something, and I know what it's like to be alone." He paused. "I've got beans and coffee. And my mother taught me it's unchristian to eat while someone else goes hungry." The mention of food made Eleanor's stomach clench painfully. She'd been too nervous about Victoria's thinly veiled threats all day to eat anything before the feast. "I don't need charity," she said, even as her resolve wavered. "It's not charity, it's decency." Adam loosened his saddle bags. "And tomorrow, if you want, I can take you to the next town. 18 miles is a long walk." Eleanor studied him carefully. At perhaps 24 or 25, Adam was known around town as a hard worker who kept to himself. Some called him standoffish, others mysterious. Unlike the local cowboys, he didn't frequent the saloon or participate in town socials. "Why would you risk helping me?" "My father has influence in these parts." Adam's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "I've never been one to care much about what other people think. Besides," he added, patting his horse's flank, "midnight here could use the exercise." The wind picked up, carrying the distant sounds of laughter and music from the feast she'd been forced to leave. Eleanor shivered, pulling her shawl tighter. "All right," she said finally. "Just for tonight, I'll figure something out tomorrow." Adam nodded, offering no further comment as he gestured for her to follow him. They walked in silence, the only sounds the soft clopping of midnight's hooves and the whispering prairie grasses. The moon rose higher, casting long shadows across the trail, and Eleanor fought the urge to look back at the town lights fading behind them. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a small clearing beside a creek. Adam methodically went about setting up camp, unsaddling his horse, gathering firewood and starting a small, contained blaze. Eleanor stood awkwardly, unsure of her place in this unexpected arrangement. "You can sit," Adam said, gesturing to a fallen log he'd positioned near the fire. "Water's clean in the creek if you're thirsty." Eleanor sank onto the log, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. While Adam prepared their simple meal, she stared into the flames, replaying the evening's events in her mind. How had Victoria managed to frame her so perfectly? And why had her father believed his new wife over his own daughter? Here. Adam's voice pulled her from her thoughts as he handed her a tin plate with beans and a chunk of cornbread. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly ravenous. They ate in silence for a while, the crackling fire and chirping crickets the only conversation. Above them, the night sky spread like black velvet studded with diamonds, more stars than Eleanor had ever bothered to notice before. "It's beautiful out here," she said softly. Adam followed her gaze upward. "That's why I camp when I can, even when there's a perfectly good bunkhouse. Something about sleeping under the stars makes a man feel honest." "Honest," Eleanor tilted her head curiously. "Like there's nowhere to hide," he explained, setting his empty plate aside. "The sky sees everything." The way he said it made Eleanor wonder what Adam Forrester might be hiding from, but she had no right to his secrets when he'd shown her nothing but kindness. "I've never been falsely accused before," she said, returning to his earlier comment. "But you have." Adam was quiet for so long that Eleanor thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed one to her. "Back in Texas," he began, his voice low, "I was foreman at a cattle ranch. Owner's son embezzled money, blamed it on me. Had evidence too, just like your situation." Eleanor's eyes widened. "What happened?" "I left before they could hang me." He sipped his coffee, eyes reflecting the firelight. "Been moving ever since." "So you believe me," Eleanor said, the realization warming her more than the fire. "About not stealing the money. I saw your face when your father accused you. That wasn't the face of a guilty woman." Tears threatened again, and Eleanor blinked them away. "My stepmother hates me. She's wanted me gone since she married my father 3 years ago, I think. I think she or my stepbrothers planted that box." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "Family can be the cruelest betrayers because they know exactly where to place the knife." The profound truth of his statement struck Eleanor. How do you move forward after something like that, after being cast out? Adam leaned forward, elbows on his knees, coffee cup cradled between calloused hands. You find your own way, build something new. I don't know how, Eleanor admitted. I've only ever been the doctor's daughter, his assistant, that's all I know. You know medicine. Adam asked, interest flaring in his eyes. Yes, I've been helping my father since I was 12, setting bones, stitching wounds, delivering babies. I know which herbs help fever and which poultices draw infection. She smiled sadly. Fat lot of good it does me now. Adam was quiet for a moment, contemplative. Ever been to Silver Creek? No, why? It's the next town over. Bigger than Redemption Springs. I hear they've been without a doctor for nearly a year since old Doc Jenkins passed. Folks have to travel 20 miles to see a physician. Hope fluttered in Eleanor's chest before reality crushed it. I'm not a doctor. I'm a woman with no credentials, no references, and now a reputation for thievery. Silver Creek doesn't know that, Adam pointed out. And people in need don't much care if help comes from a man or a woman, so long as it comes. Eleanor considered his words, turning them over like strange coins in her mind. Could she start anew, create a life independent of her father's shadow and her stepmother's hatred? Why are you helping me? She asked again, needing to understand. Adam stared into the fire for a long moment. Maybe because no one helped me when I needed it. His eyes met hers across the flames. Or maybe because right is right and what happened to you tonight wasn't right. Eleanor felt something shift inside her, a small seed of strength taking root where only despair had been hours before. Thank you, she whispered. Adam nodded once, then stood to add more wood to the fire. Get some rest, Miss Sullivan, I'll keep watch. Eleanor, she corrected. If we're sharing a campfire and you're saving my life, you might as well use my given name. The faintest smile touched his lips. Eleanor, then, sleep. Tomorrow will come soon enough. He offered her his bedroll, which she reluctantly accepted after his insistence. As she settled near the fire, wrapped in the blanket that smelled of leather and pine, Eleanor gazed up at the vast canopy of stars. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt a curious sensation of freedom mingled with her fear, as if the very sky that Adam saw everything was offering her a blank page upon which to write a new story. Her last thought before drifting to sleep was that she'd never actually noticed how handsome Adam Forrester was until she'd seen him silhouetted against the starlight. A man of few words but decisive action, sharing his meal with an outcast beneath the infinite Texas sky. Morning came with amber light filtering through the cottonwood trees along the creek. Eleanor woke, disoriented, momentarily forgetting the previous night's events until reality crashed back. She sat up quickly, finding Adam already awake, tending a small breakfast fire with coffee brewing in a dented pot. You sleep all right? He asked, not looking up from the bacon sizzling in a cast iron skillet. Better than I expected to, Eleanor admitted, smoothing her rumpled dress. She felt grimy and disheveled, a stark contrast to her usual neat appearance. I should wash up. Adam nodded toward the creek. Take your time, breakfast won't be ready for a few minutes. Eleanor made her way to the water's edge, grateful for the privacy. She knelt beside the clear running stream, splashing cold water on her face and neck, trying to wash away the remnants of tears and humiliation. Using her handkerchief, she did her best to freshen up, combing her fingers through her long auburn hair before rebraiding it. When she returned to the campfire, Adam was slicing the bacon onto 2 plates, accompanied by hardtack biscuits. It's not much, he said apologetically. It's more than I expected to have this morning, she replied, accepting the plate gratefully. They ate in companionable silence. Eleanor found herself studying Adam's features in the morning light. His face was tanned and weathered from years under the sun, with a strong jawline softened by the hint of a beard that needed trimming. His eyes were a surprising blue, not the pale sky blue of her father's, but a deeper shade that reminded her of the horizon just after sunset. What? He asked, catching her stare. Eleanor flushed. I was just thinking that I hardly know anything about you, yet here I am, completely dependent on your kindness. Not much to know, Adam said with a shrug. Been working cattle since I was 14. My pa died young, left my ma with 4 children and a small farm we couldn't keep. I took to cowboying to send money home. And your family now, are they still in Texas? A shadow passed over his face. Ma died 2 winters ago. My sister Martha married a shopkeeper in San Antonio. Brothers joined the army. He poked at the fire with a stick. We write sometimes. Eleanor sensed there was more to the story, perhaps connected to whatever drove him from Texas, but didn't press. I'm sorry about your mother. Adam nodded his acknowledgement. What about you? Beyond what everybody in town already knows, Eleanor smiled ruefully. What do they know? That you're the doctor's daughter, that your ma died of influenza, that you help your pa with his patients, and that you're… He hesitated. What? She prompted. Too educated for most of the local boys, he finished, a hint of amusement in his voice. Eleanor laughed despite herself. Is that what they say? Cletus at the saloon says you turned him down flat when he asked you to the spring dance because he couldn't name all the bones in the human hand. That's not true, Eleanor protested, then reconsidered. Well, not entirely. I turned him down because he was drunk and kept calling me Doc's pretty little girl while staring at my chest. Adam's laugh surprised her, a rich, warm sound she'd never heard from him before. That sounds more like Cletus. Their shared laughter eased something in Eleanor's chest, making the burden of her situation momentarily lighter. So what will you do? Adam asked as they packed up the camp. Silver Creek, Eleanor hesitated. I don't have many options. I have no money, no references. She twisted her hands in her skirt. But yes, I think Silver Creek might be my best chance. Adam nodded, saddle balanced on his hip as he approached midnight. I can take you there. It's a day's ride. Why would you do that? Eleanor asked. You've already done more than enough. Adam secured the saddle on his horse before answering. I'm between jobs. Carson let some hands go last week, said cattle prices are down. I was heading that direction anyway. Eleanor suspected this wasn't entirely true, but she was in no position to refuse his help. Thank you, she said simply. Adam offered his hand to help her mount, then swung up behind her. Eleanor stiffened slightly at the proximity, unused to such close contact with a man. She could feel the solid warmth of his chest against her back, his arms on either side of her as he took the reins. All right? He asked, his breath stirring the hair near her ear. Yes, she managed, grateful he couldn't see her flushed face. They rode in silence for the first hour, the steady rhythm of the horse's gait lulling Eleanor into a contemplative state. The vastness of the landscape spread before them, rolling grasslands dotted with mesquite and the occasional stand of oak trees. So different from the confines of her father's house and the small town that had been her entire world. I've never been this far from home, she admitted as they crested a small hill. First time's the hardest, Adam said. Gets easier. How many times have you started over? 3, counting when I left home at 14. There was no self-pity in his voice, only statement of fact. Does it ever feel like home again? Somewhere new? Adam was quiet for a moment. Home isn't always a place, he finally said. Sometimes it's just a feeling of being where you're meant to be. The philosophical depth of his answer surprised Eleanor. There was clearly more to Adam Forrester than the quiet, solitary cowboy the town perceived. Around midday, they stopped to rest the horse and eat some jerky Adam had in his saddlebags. They sat beneath a lonely oak tree, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. Tell me about Silver Creek, Eleanor requested. You've been there, passed through a few times, Adam confirmed. Bigger than Redemption Springs, has a real hotel instead of just rooms above the saloon. 2 saloons, actually, general store, blacksmith, even a small schoolhouse. He chewed thoughtfully on a piece of jerky. Decent folks from what I could tell. And no doctor, Eleanor mused. Not since Jenkins died. The barber does some tooth pulling, and I hear there's a midwife, but no one for serious ailments. Hope and anxiety wrestled in Eleanor's chest. Do you really think they'd accept help from a woman? I'm not even properly trained. You know more than anyone else there, Adam pointed out, and frontier towns can't afford to be particular. He was right, of course. In the territories, practical skill often trumped formal credentials. How many times had she seen her father treat patients with techniques he'd learned from books or other doctors, rather than from his brief medical training? "What about you?" she asked, watching him repack their meager supplies. "Will you stay in Silver Creek?" Adam shrugged. "For a while, maybe. Cattle ranches all around need hands. But you'll move on eventually," Eleanor stated, not quite a question. His eyes met hers, something unreadable in their depths. "That's been my pattern." They resumed their journey, the terrain gradually changing as they rode. The land became more varied, with rocky outcroppings and deeper creeks cutting across their path. In the late afternoon, they encountered another traveler, an older man driving a wagon loaded with barrels. "Afternoon," the man called, pulling his team to a halt. "You folks headed to Silver Creek?" "We are," Adam answered cautiously, his posture tensing slightly. "Roads washed out about 3 miles ahead," the man informed them. "Heavy rains last week. You'll want to take the North Fork at the split." "Much obliged," Adam said with a nod. As they rode on, Eleanor noted how Adam's hand had moved closer to his holstered revolver during the exchange. "You don't trust easily, do you?" she observed. "Keeps me alive," he replied simply. "Is that why you keep to yourself in Redemption Springs? I never saw you at any social gatherings." Adam shifted in the saddle behind her. "Never saw much point in getting attached to people or places I'd eventually leave." "That sounds lonely," Eleanor said softly. "Being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing," he countered, but there was no conviction in his voice. They reached the fork in the road the traveler had mentioned and took the northern route as advised. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Eleanor marveled at the beauty, so different from watching sunset from her bedroom window. "We won't make Silver Creek by nightfall," Adam observed. "There's a good spot to camp about a mile ahead near a spring." Eleanor nodded, a mixture of relief and disappointment flowing through her. Relief at postponing the moment when she would have to face her uncertain future alone. Disappointment that their journey together would soon end. The campsite Adam chose was sheltered by a cluster of trees, with a small, clear spring bubbling up from rocks nearby. As they dismounted, Eleanor's legs buckled slightly from the long hours of riding. Adam's hand caught her elbow, steadying her. "Thank you," she murmured, acutely aware of his touch even through the fabric of her sleeve. Their eyes met briefly before he turned away to tend to his horse. Eleanor busied herself gathering firewood, determined to be useful. By the time Adam had midnight unsaddled and grazing contentedly, she had assembled a respectable pile of kindling and larger branches. "You're handy to have around," Adam commented, arranging the wood for a fire. "I'm trying not to be a burden," Eleanor admitted. "You've done so much already." Adam struck a match, carefully nurturing the small flame until it caught the kindling. "You're not a burden," he said quietly, not looking up from his task. "It's been nice having company." Coming from the reticent Cowboy, this simple statement felt significant. Eleanor smiled to herself as she spread out the bedroll Adam had again insisted she use. Their dinner was simple, the last of Adam's beans and beef jerky, but sitting beside the fire under the emerging stars, Eleanor felt a contentment that defied her circumstances. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, in this peaceful moment with this quietly thoughtful man, she felt strangely at peace. "What will you do first?" Adam asked as they sipped coffee after eating, "when we reach Silver Creek?" Eleanor had been pondering this very question throughout the day. "Find somewhere to stay, I suppose, then see if anyone needs medical help. You'll need supplies," Adam pointed out. "Bandages, medicines." The practical obstacle deflated Eleanor's confidence. "I have no money," she reminded him. Adam seemed to consider something, his brow furrowed in thought. Finally, he reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. "I have some saved," he said, extending it toward her. "Not much, but enough to get you started." Eleanor stared at the offering, stunned. I couldn't possibly. It's not charity, Adam interrupted firmly. It's an investment. You get established, help people, then pay me back when you can. But what if I fail? What if no one trusts a woman to treat them? Then you'll find another way, he said with surprising conviction. But you won't know unless you try. Eleanor slowly accepted the pouch, feeling the weight of both the money and his faith in her. Why are you doing all this for me, truly? Adam was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. When I left Texas, I was angry, bitter, ready to believe the worst of everyone. He poked at the embers with a stick. 3 years of drifting, never staying anywhere long enough to care, then I came to Redemption Springs. Eleanor watched his face, illuminated by the dancing flames, as he continued. First time I came into your father's office, you remember? Johnson had broken his arm and I brought him in. She nodded. I remember, you were so kind, efficient but gentle. Talking to Johnson the whole time, keeping his mind off the pain while your father set the bone. A small smile touched Adam's lips. And later, when I'd come in for supplies, you always had a genuine word, a real smile. Not because I was anyone important, just because that's who you are. Eleanor felt her cheeks warm at his words. When I saw what happened last night, Adam continued, his expression darkening, how they turned on you without a second thought. It wasn't right, and I couldn't just ride away knowing that. The conviction in his voice moved something deep within Eleanor. In 2 days, this man had shown her more loyalty than people she'd known her entire life. Thank you, she said softly, not just for the help but for believing in me. Adam's eyes met hers across the fire, something unspoken passing between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits both wronged by those they trusted. We should get some rest, he said finally. Long day tomorrow. Eleanor nodded, settling onto the bedroll while Adam positioned himself on the other side of the fire, his saddle as a pillow. Despite her physical exhaustion, her mind raced with thoughts of Silver Creek, of her uncertain future, and increasingly of the complex man who had become her unexpected champion. Adam, she called softly, unsure if he was still awake. What if you didn't move on this time? In the silence that followed, Eleanor wondered if she'd overstepped some boundary. But then his voice came through the darkness, thoughtful and unhurried. Been wondering the same thing myself. With those words hanging in the night air between them, Eleanor finally drifted to sleep, her dreams filled not with the painful memories of her banishment, but with possibilities she hadn't dared consider before. They broke camp at dawn, eager to reach Silver Creek before midday. The morning was crisp and clear, promising a beautiful autumn day. As Adam helped Eleanor mount Midnight, their hands touched briefly, sending an unexpected warmth through her fingers that had nothing to do with the morning sun. The final leg of their journey took them through increasingly settled country fenced pastures, the occasional farmhouse, wagon tracks rutting the road. By mid-morning, they crested a hill and saw Silver Creek spread before them in the valley, below a proper town with wooden buildings lining a main street, smoke rising from chimneys, and the distant glint of the creek that gave the settlement its name. There it is, Adam said, reining in Midnight for a moment so they could take in the view. Your new beginning. Eleanor felt a curious mixture of trepidation and excitement. From this distance, Silver Creek looked full of promise and completely intimidating. Our new beginning, she corrected softly, then added, if you decide to stay. Adam made a non-committal sound but nudged Midnight forward, continuing their descent into the valley. The main street of Silver Creek bustled with more activity than Eleanor had expected. Wagons and riders moved between the various establishments: the general store, blacksmith shop, 2 saloons as Adam had mentioned, a small hotel, and various other businesses. People glanced curiously at them as they rode in, but without the hostility Eleanor had feared. Where should we go first? She asked, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of her situation. Hotel, Adam decided. Get you a room, clean up, then we can ask around about medical needs. The Silver Creek Hotel was a two-story wooden structure with a wide porch and actual glass windows, a sign of prosperity compared to some frontier establishments Eleanor had heard about. Adam dismounted first, then helped her down, his hands firm at her waist. They stood close for a moment, and Eleanor found herself unable to look away from his face, now openly studying hers. "You'll be all right," he said quietly, as if reading her anxiety. Eleanor nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. "Let's go in." The hotel lobby was modest but clean, with a polished wooden counter and a middle-aged woman sorting mail behind it. She looked up as they entered, her eyebrows rising slightly at Eleanor's travel-worn appearance. "Good morning," she greeted them. "Looking for rooms?" "Yes, madam," Adam answered. "One for the lady." The woman, Mrs. Holloway, according to the nameplate on the desk, looked between them with obvious curiosity. Just passing through, before Adam could respond, Eleanor stepped forward. "Actually, I'm hoping to stay. I have medical training and heard Silver Creek has been without a doctor." Mrs. Holloway's expression transformed instantly from polite interest to excited hope. "Medical training? Are you a nurse?" "I assisted my father, doctor." "Sullivan for 7 years," Eleanor explained, carefully choosing her words. "I've treated everything from broken bones to childbirths to bullet wounds." "Lord above, you're an answer to prayer," Mrs. Holloway declared, coming around the counter. "We lost Doc Jenkins last winter, and it's been a terrible hardship. Just last month, the Mitchell boy nearly died of fever because we had to send all the way to Coopersville for a doctor." Eleanor felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Then there might be a place for me here, a place." "My dear, you'll be welcomed like the second coming." Mrs. Holloway turned to Adam. "And you, sir? Are you staying as well?" Adam hesitated, his eyes finding Eleanor's. "For a while at least, I work cattle." "Perfect timing," Mrs. Holloway nodded approvingly. "The Circle T is hiring hands for the fall roundup. Owner was in here yesterday saying they're short-handed." As Mrs. Holloway showed them to their rooms, simple but clean chambers on the second floor with actual beds and washstands, Eleanor felt the first real stirrings of hope. Perhaps this unexpected journey would lead somewhere after all. After washing away the dust of travel and changing into her now wrinkled spare dress from her father's saddlebags, Eleanor met Adam downstairs. He too had cleaned up, his hair still damp, face freshly shaved except for his neatly trimmed mustache. In his clean shirt and vest, he looked handsome enough to make Eleanor's heart beat a little faster. "Mrs. Holloway has been spreading the word," he informed her with a hint of amusement. "Says half the town will probably be by before supper to meet the new doctor." "I'm not a doctor," Eleanor reminded him anxiously. "I never claimed to be." "You know more than anyone else here," Adam pointed out, echoing his words from the previous day. "That makes you close enough for Silver Creek." Their first stop was the general store, where Adam insisted on purchasing basic medical supplies with the money he'd offered her: clean bandages, alcohol, iodine, and other necessities. The storekeeper, Mr. Dawson, nearly wept when Eleanor mentioned her medical background. "My wife's expecting our fourth in 2 months," he explained. "Been worried sick about her having to travel or rely on Mrs. Fenwick, who means well but lost the Cooper twins last spring." Word spread quickly through the small town. By mid-afternoon, Eleanor had been offered the use of Doc Jenkins' old office, a small building just off the main street that had stood empty since his death. The town council, hastily assembled at the news of her arrival, agreed to let her use the space rent-free for 6 months if she would agree to stay and provide medical care. "It needs cleaning," Mayor Wilson admitted as he unlocked the dusty building for Eleanor and Adam to inspect. "But all the doctor's equipment is still here." His nephew took his personal effects but left the medical items, saying the town might need them someday. Eleanor moved through the space in awe, examining the examination table, the glass-fronted cabinet still stocked with medicines and instruments, the small bedroom in the back where the doctor had lived. "It's perfect," she breathed, running her fingers over a medical text left on the desk. "We can't pay much," the mayor cautioned, "but folks will contribute what they can: food, firewood, services." "That's more than fair," Eleanor assured him, still stunned by how quickly events were unfolding. Throughout the afternoon, a steady stream of townspeople came by, some with genuine ailments needing attention, others simply curious about the new lady doctor. Eleanor treated a child's infected cut, advised a man with chronic indigestion, and reassured an expectant mother worried about her swollen ankles. Adam stayed nearby, saying little but observing everything. When people seemed skeptical of a woman providing medical care, he would casually mention incidents from Redemption Springs where he'd witnessed Eleanor's skill firsthand. His quiet confidence in her abilities seemed to settle any doubts. As evening approached and the stream of visitors finally dwindled, Eleanor sank into a chair behind the doctor's desk, exhaustion and exhilaration warring within her. Adam leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a small smile. "You did it," he said simply. "We did it," she corrected him. "I wouldn't be here without you." A comfortable silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. "The Circle T foreman came by while you were seeing Mrs. Peterson," Adam finally said. "Offered me work starting tomorrow." Eleanor felt her heart sink slightly. "So you'll be leaving town?" "The ranch is only 5 miles out," he clarified. "I'd be back for supplies, days off." "Oh." Eleanor tried to hide her relief. "That's not far at all." Adam straightened from his position by the door, taking a step toward her desk. "Eleanor," a knock at the open door interrupted whatever he had been about to say. They both turned to see Mrs. Holloway standing there with a covered basket. "I brought you both some supper," she announced. "Figured you wouldn't have had time to think about food with all the excitement today." She set the basket on the desk, beaming at them. "The whole town is talking about our good fortune, a medical woman and a strong cowboy arriving just when we needed them most, almost like Providence had a hand in it." After Mrs. Holloway left, they shared the meal she'd brought: fried chicken, biscuits, and apple pie sitting on either side of the desk that would now be Eleanor's. "What were you going to say?" Eleanor asked as they finished eating, before Mrs. Holloway came in. Adam seemed to consider his words carefully. "Just that. I'm glad things are working out for you here." Eleanor sensed there had been more to it but didn't press. "Will you help me clean this place up a bit before you head to the Circle T tomorrow? It needs a good sweeping at least." "Of course," Adam agreed, his expression softening. "Whatever you need." That night, alone in her hotel room, Eleanor sat by the window looking out at the stars, the same stars that had witnessed her humiliation 2 nights ago, that had watched over her and Adam as they camped together, and that now shone down on the beginning of her new life. She wondered if Adam was looking at them too, just down the hall in his own room, and what thoughts might be passing through his mind. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Adam helped Eleanor clean the doctor's office, removing months of dust and cobwebs, organizing supplies, and making the space presentable. Several townswomen stopped by with furniture donations: curtains for the windows, a braided rug for the floor, cooking pots for the small stove in the back room. By midday, the transformation was remarkable. What had been an abandoned, dusty office now looked like a proper medical practice again, with Eleanor's few personal possessions giving it a feminine touch that somehow made the clinical space feel more welcoming. "I should head to the Circle T," Adam said reluctantly as they stood surveying their work. "Foreman wants me there before dark." Eleanor nodded, fighting a sudden lump in her throat. "When will you? Will you come back to town soon?" "Saturday," Adam replied. "We get Saturday nights and Sundays off." He hesitated, then added, "I thought maybe we could have supper at the hotel restaurant if you'd like." "I'd like that very much," Eleanor said, unable to keep the smile from her face. Adam shifted his weight, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. Then, in a move that surprised them both, he took her hand and raised it to his lips for a brief, gentle kiss. "Until Saturday, then," he said, his voice low. Eleanor's heart fluttered at the gesture. Until Saturday. After he'd gone, Eleanor stood in the doorway of her new clinic, watching his figure disappear down the road leading out of town. 2 days ago, she had been banished from her home, humiliated before everyone she knew. Now she stood on the threshold of a new life, one that had only become possible because a quiet cowboy had shared his meal beneath the stars and believed in her when no one else would. The days passed in a blur of activity. Word of Eleanor's arrival spread to outlying farms and ranches, bringing a steady stream of patients. She treated everything from toothaches to a compound fracture suffered by a ranch hand thrown from his horse. People paid what they could, sometimes money, often goods or promises of future services. By Friday, Eleanor had fully moved into the small living quarters behind the clinic. The townspeople's generosity had provided her with basic necessities: bedding, dishes, food, even a few dresses donated by women close to her size. Mrs. Holloway brought over a trunk of clothing left behind by a previous hotel guest who had never returned to claim it, insisting that Eleanor could alter the pieces to fit her. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. Eleanor found herself watching the clock, counting the hours until Adam's return. She had just finished setting a sprained wrist for a young boy who had fallen from a tree when Mrs. Holloway burst into the clinic, eyes wide. "There's been an accident at the Circle T," she announced breathlessly. "Wagon overturned on the north pasture. Several men hurt." "They're bringing them in now," Eleanor's heart seized with fear. "Adam, don't know who all was involved," Mrs. Holloway admitted, "but they sent a rider ahead to warn you to prepare." Pushing her personal concerns aside, Eleanor quickly organized her supplies: bandages, sutures, splints, laudanum for pain. Within 20 minutes, the first wagon arrived carrying 2 injured men. To her immense relief, neither was Adam. "4 more coming," the driver informed her as they carried the injured men inside. "One's in pretty bad shape." Eleanor worked methodically, assessing and treating the injuries: a broken arm, lacerations, a concussion. The second wagon arrived as she was finishing with the first patients. 3 more injured ranch hands were helped into the clinic, followed by a 4th being carried on a makeshift stretcher. Eleanor's breath caught when she recognized Adam on the stretcher, his face pale and drawn with pain, his shirt soaked with blood. "What happened?" she demanded, directing the men to place him on the examination table. "Wagon wheel broke on a steep grade," one of the hands explained. "Tipped over, rolled. Forrester pushed young Jimmy out of the way, got caught underneath." Forcing herself to remain professional despite her racing heart, Eleanor cut away Adam's shirt to reveal a deep gash across his side and chest. She worked swiftly, cleaning the wound, determining no major organs had been damaged, though he'd lost considerable blood. His left arm was also badly bruised, possibly fractured. "Eleanor," Adam murmured, his eyes fluttering open as she prepared to stitch his wound. "Don't try to talk," she instructed, attempting to keep her voice steady. "You're going to be fine." "Knew you'd take care of me," he whispered before wincing as she began the first stitch. For the next hour, Eleanor treated all the injured men, but Adam's condition worried her most. After stabilizing him and bandaging his wounds, she insisted he remain at the clinic where she could monitor him. "Rest of you can go back to the ranch or stay at the hotel," she told the other injured men. "But I want him here overnight at least." By evening, the other ranch hands had departed, some returning to the Circle T, others taking rooms at the hotel to recover. Eleanor sat beside Adam's bed in the back room of the clinic, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest as he slept, the laudanum she'd given him for pain keeping him comfortable. "You gave me quite a scare," she said softly, though she knew he couldn't hear her. "We were supposed to have supper tonight." To her surprise, Adam's eyes opened slightly. "Rain check?" he asked, his voice rough but with a hint of his dry humor intact. Eleanor smiled through the tears that suddenly threatened. "Absolutely. As soon as you're well enough to sit at a table without bleeding on the tablecloth." Adam's hand found hers where it rested on the edge of the bed. "Sorry to ruin our plans. You saved that boy's life, Eleanor reminded him, having heard the full story from the other ranch hands. Jimmy wouldn't have survived being crushed by that wagon. Just instinct, Adam mumbled, his eyes growing heavy again from the medication. Rest now, Eleanor instructed, squeezing his hand gently. I'll be right here. For the next 3 days, Eleanor divided her time between caring for Adam and seeing her other patients. The Circle T owner visited, praising Adam's quick thinking and promising his job would be waiting when he recovered. Various townspeople stopped by with food and well wishes, seeming to take Adam's heroic actions as confirmation that their town had been blessed with not 1 but 2 valuable new residents. On the evening of the 3rd day, Adam was sitting up in bed, strong enough to eat a proper meal and clearly restless at being confined. The stitches need more time, Eleanor reminded him when he suggested returning to the ranch. Another few days at least. I'm taking up your only patient bed, Adam protested. No one else needs it at the moment, she countered. Besides, She hesitated, then admitted softly, I like having you here. Adam's expression softened. I like being here too. The small room suddenly felt intimate in a way it hadn't before, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Eleanor busied herself adjusting Adam's bandage, trying to maintain her professional demeanor despite the way her pulse quickened when her fingers brushed his skin. Eleanor, Adam said, his hand catching hers to still her movements. I need to tell you something. She looked up, meeting his intense gaze. What is it? When that wagon was coming down on me, all I could think about was that I might die without ever telling you. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. Without telling you that meeting you has changed everything for me, Eleanor's breath caught. What do you mean? For 3 years I've been running, never staying anywhere long, never letting myself care about anyone or anything. His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. Then 2 nights under the stars with you, and suddenly I'm thinking about putting down roots, building something permanent. Adam, Eleanor whispered, her heart hammering in her chest. I know it's fast, he continued. We barely know each other, but I think sometimes life gives you a second chance if you're brave enough to take it. Eleanor's free hand moved to cup his cheek, the slight roughness of his emerging beard against her palm. I was banished from a feast, she said softly, but found something infinitely more precious because of it. Adam leaned into her touch. Is it crazy to think we could build a life here, together? If it's crazy, then I'm happy to be mad, Eleanor replied, a smile blooming across her face. Because I've been thinking the same thing. The kiss that followed was gentle, mindful of Adam's injuries, but filled with promise of healing, of belonging, of a future neither had dared imagine just days ago. Over the following weeks, Adam recovered his strength while staying in Eleanor's spare room, helping around the clinic as he healed. Their relationship deepened through shared meals, long conversations, and the gradual revelation of each other's pasts. Eleanor told him of her mother's death, of Victoria's subtle cruelties, of her father's gradual withdrawal. Adam shared the full story of his false accusation in Texas, his years of lonely wandering, the walls he'd built around his heart. When Adam was well enough to return to work at the Circle T, he did so only as a day worker, returning each evening to town and to Eleanor. The arrangement raised a few eyebrows at first, but Eleanor's growing status as the town's respected healer and Adam's reputation for honesty and hard work soon quieted any gossip. One evening in late November, as the first cold snap heralded the approaching winter, Adam and Eleanor sat by the fire in her small living quarters, discussing their future. The foreman at Circle T offered me a permanent position, Adam informed her. Year-round work, not just seasonal. With a small cabin on the property if I want it. Eleanor's heart sank slightly. That's wonderful news, though I'll miss seeing you every evening if you move to the ranch. Adam took her hand, his expression serious. Actually, I was thinking we might need a bigger place than this clinic eventually, but not at the ranch. What do you mean? Adam said, suddenly dropping to one knee before her, "that I love you, Eleanor Sullivan. These past weeks have shown me what home really feels like, and it's wherever you are." From his pocket, he produced a simple silver ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears of joy sprang to Eleanor's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." As Adam slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a kiss that promised forever, Eleanor marveled at life's unexpected turns. Her banishment from Redemption Springs, meant to be her destruction, had instead led her to true redemption. Love, purpose, and a home of her own making. 3 months later, on a crisp February day, Eleanor Sullivan became Eleanor Forrester in a ceremony at Silver Creek's small church. The entire town turned out to celebrate the union of their beloved healer and the quiet cowboy who had become an integral part of their community. With the money they had saved Adam from his work at the Circle T and Eleanor from her growing medical practice, they purchased a small house on the edge of town with enough land for a garden and a few horses. The clinic remained in its original location, but their home became a sanctuary where they could build their life together. Spring brought an unexpected letter from Redemption Springs from Eleanor's father, who had discovered Victoria's deception after catching her stepbrothers trying to steal more money. His apology was heartfelt if belated, begging Eleanor's forgiveness and asking if he might visit his daughter and her new husband. "What do you think?" Eleanor asked Adam after reading him the letter. "Should I invite him?" Adam considered carefully before answering. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," he said finally. "But it might mean a chance to heal old wounds. It's your decision, but I'll support whatever you choose." Eleanor wrote back, inviting her father to visit but making clear that while she was willing to rebuild their relationship, Silver Creek was now her home. Thomas Sullivan arrived 2 weeks later, visibly aged by regret and the dissolution of his marriage to Victoria. The reunion was tentative at first, but healing had begun. By summer's end, Eleanor had trained 2 young women from town as assistants, expanding her practice to serve the growing population. Adam, proving to have a keen business sense, had partnered with the livery stable owner to breed and train quality horses, a venture that allowed him to combine his cowboy skills with his desire to remain close to town. On the first anniversary of the night Eleanor had been banished from the harvest feast, she and Adam hosted their own celebration, inviting the entire town to share in their abundance. Tables laden with food stretched across their front yard, lanterns hung from tree branches, and music filled the air as people danced and laughed beneath the same stars that had witnessed their first meal together. "Quite a difference from a year ago," Adam observed as they stood arm in arm, watching their friends and neighbors enjoy the feast. Eleanor leaned her head against his shoulder. "If someone had told me then that being cast out would lead to all this happiness, I never would have believed them." "Sometimes the worst moments lead us exactly where we need to be," Adam replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I thank God every day that I decided to follow you that night." "As do I," Eleanor agreed, turning in his arms to face him. "I have something to tell you, something wonderful." Adam's brow lifted in question. "Dr. Mercer confirmed it yesterday when he passed through town," Eleanor said, her eyes shining. "We're going to have a baby in the spring." Joy transformed Adam's face as he lifted her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. "A baby," he repeated in wonder. "Our family." Later that night, after their guests had departed and they sat alone on their porch watching the stars, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the humiliation of being banished from a feast to finding love beneath the stars, from 2 lonely souls adrift to partners building a future together, life had unfolded in ways neither could have imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Adam asked, his arm warm around her shoulders. "About how sometimes what seems like an ending is really just the beginning," Eleanor replied, placing her hand over his where it rested on her still flat stomach. "And how grateful I am that you shared your meal with me beneath the stars that night." Adam's kiss was tender, full of promise and the certainty of a love that had transformed them, both a love that had begun when a banished woman and a solitary cowboy found in each other not just companionship, but home.